You've reached the busy signal. I'm Jim, your host, and this podcast is all about revisiting the pop culture we grew up with. From the TV shows and movies we love, to music, commercials, and the moments that never really left us. The Busy Signal, episode 68. Thanks for listening. You remember what handheld gaming looked like before the Game Boy, right? Those little gray and black LCD screens? The ones where the background never changed and your character had limited movements? Every single game you owned was its own device. You couldn't switch cartridges, you had to switch the entire system. One game, one screen, one set of buttons. And I have a certain amount of nostalgia for Tiger handheld games, I really do. I mean, they ruled portable gaming for quite some time.
Tiger puts arcade action in the palm of your hand. Games like Paperboy. Steer your bike through a 7-day paper route in the jungles of suburbia. Pick up and throw newspapers, avoid obstacles, and add subscribers while breaking scoring records and windows. Also available, Ninja Gaiden, Mega Man 2, Double Dragon 2, and Super Sprint. Tiger LCD video games. Video excitement in the palm of your hand.
And then suddenly, everything changed. Because when the Game Boy showed up, it didn't just give you a new way to play. It gave you a real console. This was a proper console you could take with you. Interchangeable cartridges, actual depth, games that felt like they belonged on your TV now were living in your backpack, in your car ride, under your covers with a flashlight while you were supposed to be asleep. So if you've been hanging out with me for a bit, you already know that we've got a couple episodes. We've done some deep dives with the NES. We've done a couple episodes with the SNES. So if you missed any of those, go back to the archives. It'll be good times, I promise. And just like those episodes, I'm not going to rank anything. No top 10, no best of. This is all about what I played back in the day. And here's the twist. I didn't even own an original Game Boy. I was the kid who chose a Game Gear. Yeah. We'll unpack that decision another day. But my friends, they all had Game Boy. So I still got plenty of time with it, passing it around, crowded around a tiny screen arguing whose turn it was next. And eventually I did get a Game Boy Color, but we'll get to that. And look, the Game Boy wasn't perfect, not even close. So we'll address that and the games as well as the accessories. Because if you had one of these things, the chances are that you had some funky apparatuses hanging off of it just so you could play in the car, like a gaming Frankenstein. But first, let's rewind to the very beginning, because when this gray beige-ish brick launched, it didn't just show up with hardware. It showed up with games that changed everything. The Nintendo Game Boy first launched in Japan in April 1989. And just a few months later, it hit North America that July. And it didn't take long for it to change gaming, really. In its first year alone, it sold millions of units worldwide, proving this wasn't just a gimmick. It was the future of gaming on the go.
They said it wasn't humanly possible. All the power and excitement of Nintendo right in the palm of your hand. Introducing Game Boy. It's portable, it's in stereo, and its games are interchangeable. Game Boy comes complete with batteries and the outrageous new game Tetris. And for head-to-head competition, use Video Link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, portable power.
It came bundled with Tetris, which you could technically play elsewhere, but never like this. You had Tetris in your hands, anytime, anywhere. And the controls were simple. It was already a Nintendo controller just built into the actual console, so it was insanely addictive, and anyone could pick it up and just get it. And then you had the exclusive games, built specifically for the Game Boy, because that's how you sell a console. You give people something they can't play anywhere else, right?
The Martians are coming! Yes, and Mario is your only hope. Team up with him in Super Mario Land. Guide him on the Nintendo Game Boy. Challenge the mysteries and terrors of ancient Egypt. Battle all the horrors of the deep. Master lots of weird worlds to give Mario a happy ending and make your world a better place. Super Mario Land and other exciting games for Game Boy. Nintendo. Now you're playing with power. Portable power.
And if you had a Game Boy in 1989, 90, The chances are you didn't just own Super Mario Land, you lived it. And that first commercial, that commercial knew exactly what it was doing, because there was no need to sell you on Mario, you were already sold. It leaned into one idea. This is Mario, but not the one you know. No Mushroom Kingdom, no Bowser. Suddenly, you're in Sarasa Land, fighting weird enemies, bouncing through pyramids, dodging giant stone heads, and randomly piloting a submarine and a plane, like Mario's got some weird side hustles all of a sudden. And as a kid, that was the hook. It felt new and a little strange, almost like a secret version of Mario that only existed on your Game Boy. But it still felt right, like the jumping, the music, that rhythm. It was all there, just different enough to keep you putting in those reps. And Nintendo knew exactly what they were doing. You don't launch a brand new system without Mario, especially back then. Nintendo was Mario. Mario was Nintendo. And once again, the real magic here was that you could take Mario with you everywhere. Car rides, back seats, schoolyards. Suddenly, Mario wasn't stuck on the family TV. And not to mention, Super Mario Land nailed the portability feel. It wasn't too long of a game, it wasn't too hard, just challenging enough that you could beat it. And then hand it to your friend like, all right, your turn. Simple, weird, Mario. Perfect recipe for the Game Boy. After Super Mario Land, Nintendo comes right back and quietly delivers what I think is a massive upgrade. Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins.
Obey me, Wario. I am your master. Mario is your enemy.
The wicked imposter Wario has cast an evil spell over Mario Land.
Don't let Mario get the 6 golden coins. Don't let Mario reach the palace.
This is the biggest, most dangerous, most challenging Game Boy adventure yet.
Obey Wario. Destroy Mario.
Don't fall under Wario's evil spell in Super Mario Land 2, only on Game Boy.
You could feel it immediately. It's not just another Game Boy Mario game. This is closer to Super Mario Bros. 3 in structure. A world map, branching paths, actual progression. It's bigger and weirder, and it's just a better game in almost every way. And out of all that, the thing that everyone remembers? This is the game that introduces Wario. Wario doesn't feel like a throwaway villain. He feels like a problem Mario's gonna have for a long time. Because Nintendo takes that idea and immediately flips the script. In the next iteration in this game series, Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3, now Wario's the star, not Mario. Now Wario's the lead character chasing treasure, smashing through levels, and he's doing everything in this heavier, greed-driven style that feels totally different from Mario.
You're getting very greedy. You are me, Wario. You're very handsome. You have amazing powers. Plunder and pillage pirates' treasure. Bag a bazillion coins. Find me a castle bigger than Mario's. Repeat after me. I'm the bad guy in Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3, where being bad is good and greed is good. Come and get it on Game Boy, greedy.
It really works so well that Wario just doesn't go away. He spills into sequels, spin-offs, and tons of appearances in the wider Nintendo universe, ever since pretty much. We still have Wario making appearances and starring in his own games to this day. It's one of those rare Nintendo pivots where a villain doesn't just simply stick around. They take over. Now, before we get all misty-eyed, let's remember, the Game Boy wasn't without its flaws, and Nintendo was perfectly aware of those flaws, because right out of the box, no charger. Nintendo basically said, here's 4 AA batteries, good luck, have fun. So if you were serious about your handheld gaming, you opted for the AC adapter to save your wallet, or a rechargeable battery pack for a little life on the go. And then there was the screen. Well, no, not the screen. The screen was fine. It was the lack of light, really. There was no backlight, and that meant the second it got dark, in the car, in your room, wherever, you were done. Game over. Unless you had the Light Boy, a big, clunky, chunky contraption that snapped onto your Game Boy, and it blasted light right onto the screen, Kind of reminds me of a warming light, like it's hatching an egg or something. But hey, it worked. Also, don't forget, carrying cases were a thing because otherwise, you're just walking around with loose cartridges. You gotta protect your gear, right? And let's not forget the ultimate Game Boy accessory, the link cable, the thing that turned Game Boy from a solo experience into something bigger, a shared experience.
You can't catch all 150 Pokemon by yourself.
So close.
You need a friend to trade with. So you can grab a link cable and a friend with a Game Boy, and with both packs, you can catch them all.
I never had one, but for kids playing games like Pokémon, this thing was everything. The more you go back and look at the Game Boy, one thing is super clear. It had a massive library of games, original games, arcade ports, Nintendo classics shrunken down to fit in your pocket, and it just kept going. In 1994, Nintendo did something brilliant. They released the Super Game Boy, a cartridge you plugged into your Super NES and then plugged a Game Boy game into that. And boom, your handheld library was now available to play on the family TV.
Brace yourself. It's Super Game Boy from Nintendo. Play your Game Boy games on the Super NES in living color. Even choose your own color combinations. Play all 350 Game Boy games. How does that strike you? Super Game Boy for the Super NES. Game Boy games in color, intense.
The cost? Around $60. That was probably around what a Super Nintendo game cost at the time, but this one's going to let you play all your Game Boy games. It worked so surprisingly well because it basically had all of the Game Boy hardware built right into that cartridge, so you weren't going to get some weird watered-down version. You were playing the real thing, just blown up for your TV screen. And Nintendo didn't just stop there. The Super Game Boy added color palettes to those classic black and white games, wrapped them in custom borders, and in some cases, some little enhancements here and there. And no, just like the actual Game Boy, the Super Game Boy wasn't perfect. Games ran a little bit faster and the audio was slightly higher pitched. But honestly, most kids didn't care. For goodness sakes, you were playing Game Boy on your TV. What was better than that? So getting back to what I said in the opening, I was a Nintendo kid. I had the NES, I had the SNES, I had the N64, I had a Wii. But even though I was a Nintendo kid, in those early 90s, I was lured away. And instead of choosing a portable console with nothing but great games and actual battery life, I chose the Sega Game Gear. And I'll do a Game Gear episode sometime in the future, I'm sure of it. But in November 1998, Nintendo didn't just update the console like they did in 96 with the Game Boy Pocket, which was basically a slim version of the Game Boy. No, in 98, they reinvented it with the Game Boy Color.
Everybody's got a colorful side. Here's ours. Lots of new color games for Game Boy Color, like Tetris DX, Wario Land 2, Zelda DX, Looney Tunes Carrot Crazy, Quest for Camelot, and there's R-Type Plus, Super Mario, and Conker's Pocket Tales. All bring Game Boy to a whole new level. New Game Boy Color. Now the games are as colorful as you.
The GBC blew up immediately. For the first time, your Game Boy games weren't stuck in that greenish blur. You had actual color, a faster processor, and a system that still played all your old Game Boy games. That backwards compatibility, that was massive. It meant that your library instantly carried over, while new games that were built to take part of the new upgrade could. So I did. In 1999, I bought a Game Boy Color so that I could play what everybody was playing in the late 90s, Pokémon.
Hey, little buddy, want a ride? Pikachu! Yeah, whatever!
Where can you catch all 150 Pokemon? Got you? On your Game Boy, that's where. Pokemon for Game Boy is here. With both packs, you can catch them all. Games and systems sold separately.
When Pokémon hit the Game Boy in 1998, it didn't come alone. It launched as two versions in the United States, Pokémon Red and Pokémon Blue. Each had exclusive Pokémon, So if you wanted all 150, you had to trade with friends, which was the whole point. Then in 1999, Pokémon Yellow released, and Pikachu was available, and a storyline a little closer to the anime show was playable. However, the Ash Ketchum in me went to Professor Oak and chose Charmander. I picked up Pokémon Red, and the wild part about this is I don't like RPGs. I don't like role-playing games, but Pokémon Red, I've played that a few times over the last 25 years, and it never gets old. It is fun. But I don't. I don't ask me about any other RPGs I've ever played. I hate them all. Like I said, my personal experience with the Game Boy as an owner is limited to the Game Boy Color, which was in the very late 90s. I didn't have a Light Boy or a Worm Light or external speakers for my Game Boy. I went out and got the most high-tech add-ons available at the time for my Game Boy Color, the Game Boy camera and the Game Boy printer. The camera worked on the OG and my color Game Boy as well. And by worked, I mean it snapped grainy black and white photos at a whopping 128 by 112 resolution. Basically, it looked like surveillance footage from a toaster.
When it's least expected, you're elected, you're the star today. Smile, you're on Game Boy camera. It's fun to look at yourself as other people do. How's your sense of humor? There's a rumor, laughter's on its way. Smile, you're on Game Boy camera.
Yes, with Game Boy camera, you can turn photography into photography.
Smile, you're on Game Boy camera.
Printing? The Game Boy printer was a tiny thermal printer that spat out your photos on receipt-style paper like CVS. It just kept going. You had to cut it. And then you could peel the back for stickers.
It's Game Boy Camera. It fits into any Game Boy. Just pick a friend, pick a nose, pick a friend's nose, eyes, ears, whatever. You can animate it, then with a printer you can print it out and stick it wherever you want. We call it photography. Game Boy Camera. Make fun of everyone.
And the thing with the camera, it was rough. Even back then, it looked rough. Like the images were muddy, blocky, high contrast blobs. And that probably was part of the charm. And you could get goofy with stamps on your photos and like make weird faces and warp faces and turn your friends into pixelated nightmares, but it wasn't good. But it was unforgettable. Nintendo basically gave kids of 1999 a meme generator before memes existed. The Game Boy. That thing was everything. I didn't even have one at first. I was that kid borrowing other people's Game Boys, flipping through their cartridges like, what you got? Let me try that. And that was kind of half the fun sometimes for me, seeing what different games everyone had. But once you had your own, well, that was a different level. Suddenly your games went everywhere with you. Like I said, car rides, waiting rooms, school trips, it didn't matter. That kind of portability felt wild back then. Not to mention, these things were built like tanks. You couldn't break a Game Boy if you tried. So I gotta ask, did this unlock anything for you? Were you a Game Boy kid? Or did you go the Game Gear route? If you did, I sympathize with you. I'm there. And if you were a Game Boy kid, what were you playing? Were you playing like any weird, random, deep cut games I should check out? Because I know they're out there. I don't know them all. Like I said, the Game Boy library is deep. Keep in mind, I did say I'm not an RPG person, so, no. But hit me up on the show's Instagram at BusySignalCast. Up, down, left, right, BA, select, start that follow button so you don't miss your daily shot of nostalgia. We run weekly themes and post all the commercials from the episodes. And seriously, I read all the comments, so jump in, say hi, don't be shy. I might just read your comment on a future show. Just like I'm about to do for Gerospace on Instagram, who commented on last episode, 2000's infomercials, and they said, "Oh, the hours of my life wasted watching ShamWow and Slapchop." Same here, Gerospace. Same here. Sad but true. I definitely wasted too much time watching stuff I was not going to buy. But man, you gotta admit, those things pulled you in, those infomercials. Anyway, then we also heard from friend of the show, Chad, from the Retro Resurgence podcast, and he writes, 2000's infomercials, one of my secret guilty pleasures. Magic Bullet, Slapchop, I'm here for it all. This episode is the perfect complement to the 80s and 90s episodes from the archives. Didn't even know I needed this one. Wait, am I in a Busy Signal infomercial? Nice, Chad. That was good. I see what you did there. Always good to hear from our nostalgic neighbors over there at the Retro Resurgence podcast. Thank you guys for checking in. You can also find the Busy Signal on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And if you're enjoying the show, subscribe. Leave a 5-star rating or a positive review. It really does help others find the show and relive back in the day. Well, guys, that does it for this episode. If anyone's looking for me, I'll be playing some Game Boy until I run out of batteries or it gets dark out, whichever comes first. Thanks for hanging out. Catch you later. Once again, I'd like to say thanks for listening. And as always, you can listen to the Busy Signal everywhere quality podcasts are streamed. Hit the subscribe button to have a new episode delivered directly to your favorite device every other Friday. If you really like the show, leave a 5-star rating or a positive review on Apple and Spotify. That lets everyone know to come check out what you already think is awesome. You can also head over to Instagram and follow @BusySignalCast for even more retro-nostalgic content. I share a good amount of stuff over there that isn't mentioned in the show. While you're there, say hi in the comments. Don't be shy. And until next time, remember, reach out and touch the past.
Obey Wario.